Most people visit Marble House to experience the scale, craftsmanship, and excessive opulence of America's Gilded Age. But what a lot of people don't realize is that this house also became one of the most powerful platforms for women's rights in America, where a Gilded Age socialite turned privilege into power and used her home, Marble House, as a tool for change. She stunned Newport society when she divorced her husband for adultery, kept Marble House in the settlement, and then she did something that had never been done before. She opened up the doors of a Newport mansion to the public for the first time ever, using this house, her summer cottage, to push women's suffrage into the spotlight, making it fashionable. Today, we're stepping inside Marble House in Newport, Rhode Island, exploring the architecture, design, and decor while learning about the woman behind it all. Hi, I'm Allie, and welcome back to Fab Little Dish, where we celebrate vintage homes, historic interiors, and the stories that keep these places alive. If you love the stories historic houses tell, then give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps support preservation and awareness efforts. Now let's head to Newport, Rhode Island. Alva Belmont, known to the world as Alva Vanderbilt, was the daughter of a wealthy cotton merchant in Alabama. But her father lost most of his fortune, including the family's place in society during the Civil War. This shaped Alva's early life and determination to gain back what she once had. From the beginning, Alva understood how power worked, with money, and she understood that in her world, marriage was one of the few ways a woman could get that power. She married William K. Vanderbilt, grandson of Cornelius Vanderbilt, and suddenly Alva found herself at the center of one of the most powerful families in America. The Vanderbilt fortune had been built on railroads, and by the 1880s, the family had become something close to American royalty. Society revolved around wealth, visibility, and spectacle. The more grand, over the top, the better, and Alva was determined not just to participate, but to dominate it. She orchestrated lavish events and famously staged a costume ball where she appeared dressed as a Venetian Renaissance princess, inviting nearly all of high society while very deliberately excluding Caroline Astor. It was a calculated move and it worked. Shortly after, Alva received the social recognition she originally had been denied. Marble House itself was part of that strategy. These summer cottages weren't cottages at all. They were statements of one's standing in society. Given to Alva as a gift for her 39th birthday, the house was designed not only as a summer retreat, but as a statement. And while this home began as a tool for social power, Marble House would eventually become something much more purposeful. In 1896, Alva shocked society by divorcing her husband 3 years after Marble House's completion, on grounds of adultery, scandalous for the time to say the least. She kept Marble House in the settlement, a very smart move. About a year later, she remarried Oliver Hazard Perry Belmont, but that marriage was also cut short when Belmont died suddenly, leaving Alva a widow and searching for purpose. It was during this period of grief and transition that women's suffrage entered her life. Alva began attending lectures in New York, listening to leaders in the movement speak about voting rights, political power, and women's place in society at the time, and something clicked for her. After meeting with suffrage organizers and activists, she became fully committed to the cause. And Alva did what she always had done best: what she wanted. She understood promotion, image, spectacle, and to the horror of her neighbors, she used her summer cottage to make a big splash for the cause. Alva understood media, how it worked, and how it could benefit one, especially if you had a powerful message to send. And to the horror of her neighbors, she opened up the doors of her Newport summer cottage to the public. She was intent on bringing in as many people as she could into the movement. She wanted to spark a buzz, create momentum, and she knew how to command the attention for such a cause. For the first time ever, the gates of a Newport mansion were thrown open. Over 1,000 people were drawn to the mystique of Marble House, creating a mile-long traffic jam of visitors eager to step inside. Alva charged $1 to access the grounds of Marble House, and she charged $5 to tour the house itself, with every dollar going directly to the women's suffrage movement. In doing so, she placed her private life, her wealth, and her elegant lifestyle on full display for the sake of the cause. So Marble House always lived up to its purpose, to entertain, except now, its entertainment had purpose itself. Visitors walked through her French dining room, climbed the marble staircase, and saw her European collections, most of them experiencing the interiors of a Newport mansion for the very first time. Alva knew that the cause needed visibility, and she knew how to drive that. Marble House became the setting for suffrage conventions, speeches, and gatherings that helped push the movement into the public eye. At one of these conventions, Alva took the stage alongside her daughter, Consuelo. Together, they spoke to a captivated crowd about the necessity for women's voting rights, something extraordinarily rare for women to be vocal about at the time, especially women of their social stature. She went even further. Alva was a marketer ahead of her time, commissioning a line of china called Votes for Women. This china had their debut at the 1914 Suffrage Convention that Alva organized and held right here at Marble House, and were sold to raise funds for the cause. And I love that this tradition still lives on today. I actually picked up this little piece during my visit here. She also co-founded the National Women's Party, and by 1916, the group would organize what would be known as the first protest ever held in front of the White House. This is when suffrage becomes fashionable. Alva Vanderbilt wasn't just a supporter of women's suffrage. She was one of its key architects and voices, a woman who understood that power, once claimed, could be redirected and used to break down barriers. Marble House was built between 1888 and 1892. Designed by renowned architect Richard Morris Hunt, the home was modeled after the Petit Trianon at Versailles, Alva's vision of European grandeur reimagined for Newport. This was meant to be Versailles revisited, and it truly is fit for a queen. The house cost $7 million to build and another $4 million to decorate and furnish, making Marble House the most ornate and expensive summer residence in Newport at the time. It was also one of the earliest and most important examples of Beaux Arts architecture in the United States. True to its namesake, Marble House is made of over 500,000 cubic feet of marble. The home contained 50 rooms, each one designed to impress. Everything about this place was meant to make a statement, and Alva was involved in every single detail. She oversaw the creation of Marble House personally, working closely with Richard Morris Hunt for nearly 4 years to ensure that every detail met her exact standards. When Marble House was unveiled in 1892, William Kay and Alva Vanderbilt dazzled Newport society with their stunning new cottage by the sea. This instantly became one of the most talked about homes in America. Newport houses were built for one reason: to entertain. As guests approached this entrance, they passed through massive steel and glass doors weighing nearly 1.5 tons each, and then stepping into a world filled with rare marble, Tiffany glass, and exquisite works of art. This dining room was remodeled after the Salon of Hercules at the Palace of Versailles, and this space was meant to make a similar lasting impression. Richard Morris Hunt designed the space around these portraits, with Louis XIV, the Sun King himself, positioned front and center. And this isn't just a decorative reference. This painting was actually stolen during the French Revolution and cut straight out of its original frame before eventually making its way here, a piece of royal France right here in Newport. The walls are clad in rose-colored marble imported from Algeria and North Africa. The massive dining table comfortably seated 20 guests. Each Louis XIV inspired chair weighed nearly 75 pounds, so footmen were stationed nearby to move them in and out throughout the evening for guests. And during formal dinners, Alva completed the illusion. Her footmen wore white powdered wigs in full 18th century French fashion, reinforcing the idea that this wasn't just a meal, it was a carefully constructed experience. Leave it to Alva to never miss a single detail when it came to making a lasting impression. When Alva wasn't entertaining, this is where she spent her time. Often referred to as both the morning room and as the library, this space feels noticeably more intimate than the grand rooms we've just seen. This is where Alva read, reflected, wrote letters, and planned her next social affair. The library is wrapped in ornate walnut paneling, with built-in bookcases lining the walls from floor to ceiling. These held Alva's personal collection of books, and the rolling ladder allowed easy access to every level. I absolutely love this. The arched windows bring in soft filtered light, framed by richly layered textiles that add warmth to the room. Alva spent part of her childhood in Paris, and her appreciation for European culture, learning, and of course, French design is woven directly into this space. This wasn't a room necessarily meant to impress a crowd. It was meant to speak to one's mind and to one's soul. And despite its elegance, it feels surprisingly lived in. As you move through the marble hallway, this portrait almost stops you in your tracks. This is Alva Vanderbilt, painted at the height of her social power. The portrait was done by Giovanni Boldini, known for capturing movement, attitude, and personality. And that's exactly what you feel here. The Gothic Room, named for its famous Gothic Revival design style, was designed to display Alva Vanderbilt's collection of medieval and Renaissance decorative objects. The space is illuminated by 4 stained glass windows, combining both 13th and 19th century patterns, casting colored lights all around, which immediately changes the entire mood of the room. What's fascinating is how this space came together. Much of the Gothic decor was purchased by Alva directly from a catalog. She loved the collection so much that she didn't just select individual pieces, she bought the entire collection and styled it right here in this room. The carved stone mantle, the ceiling elements, and even the wood flooring were all crafted overseas, shipped to Newport in massive crates, and assembled here piece by piece. A little Europe right here in Newport. And this room also holds one of the most emotionally charged moments in any of the Vanderbilt homes. It was here that Consuelo Vanderbilt, Alva's daughter, reluctantly accepted the marriage proposal from the Duke of Marlborough, a union driven by social ambition rather than love. Standing in this room, it's impossible not to feel the tension between grandeur and Consuelo's sacrifice. The Grand Salon, also known as the Gold Room, is where Marble House leans heavily into Alva's Mini-Versailles fantasy. The Grand Salon functioned as both a reception hall and as a ballroom. Gold leaf covers nearly every surface, catching light from the chandeliers and mirrors so the room seems to glow from within. The fireplace was inspired by the Medici Chapel in Florence, meant to connect the wealth and power of the American Vanderbilts with that of the powerful Medici family of Italy. Throughout the room, you'll see subtle nods to the Sun King, Louis XIV himself. Above the mirrors, you'll spot Apollo, the sun god himself, and the chandeliers have references to Apollo, reinforcing that connection to power and Alva's love for French design. The heavy silk textiles here are modeled after 18th century Louis XIV style, featuring a deep green damask pattern originally woven by Propel & Company in Lyon, a French mill that supplied luxury interiors across Europe, including the Palace of Versailles. The ceiling features a beautiful painting of Minerva, and the decorative framing surrounding it is based on that of the ceiling of Queen Marie Antoinette's bedroom in the Palace of Versailles. So many references to the palace that Alva clearly idolized. By borrowing specific elements from the best of palace designs, Alva is not only paying tribute to the greats, but also displaying her impeccable eye for design. For only just about 6 or 7 weeks each summer, this room was filled with music, conversation, and dancing. Then it was left silent for the rest of the year, but on those summer nights, with the doors wide open and the sea breeze drifting through, this space would have felt alive. For a moment, the world must have felt like a fairy tale. And this house was the setting for her daughter Consuelo's coming out ball, one of the most extravagant and talked about events that Newport society has ever seen to this day. Just imagine guests arriving here as the sun was beginning to set during Newport summers. It must have felt completely magical. This grand staircase is the moment where the public spectacle below gives way to the more private spaces above, and yet the entire experience up here still feels incredibly theatrical. As guests ascended, they would have been fully visible from below. Gowns sweeping the steps, jewels catching the light, conversations drifting down into the hallway. This staircase was designed for you to be seen, to display anyone who was standing on it. These rooms with glass casing in front of them on the mezzanine are styled as sitting rooms, but they were actually ladies' and gentlemen parlors at one point. These would have been used as coat rooms and powder rooms for guests of the Marble House. Across from this room is the ladies' powder room, lighter, more refined, and noticeably softer in tone, and more elegant. This is where women would have adjusted their gowns, fixed their hair, and taken a breath away from the public spaces below just for a moment. This is William K. Vanderbilt's bedroom. William became head of the Vanderbilt family after the death of his older brother Cornelius in 1899. Beyond Marble House, he was one of the most powerful industrialists in America, overseeing major projects, including the transformation and expansion of New York's Grand Central Terminal into the landmark we recognize today. The design here is noticeably more masculine and restrained compared to the other rooms in the house. And look at this bust of Louis XIV. I'm telling you, he's everywhere here. Surrounding him are bas-reliefs of Jules Ardouin Mansart, Louis XIV's architect, and Richard Morris Hunt, Marble House's architect, honoring the beauty and design of Versailles and also aligning the architects who created both Versailles and Marble House. This is Alva Vanderbilt's bedroom, her most personal space, and my favorite room in the entire house. This room is designed in Louis XV style, drawing inspiration from grand Parisian interiors of the late 17th and early 18th centuries. The symmetry, the ornamentation, the sense of ceremony, it absolutely feels like a bedroom fit for a queen. Underfoot, an aubusson carpet anchors the space. These were luxury textiles reserved for the elite, chosen not only for beauty, but for what they represented. The silk throughout this space is an exact replica of a fabric pattern used from a French company that also supplied fabric for none other than the Palace of Versailles. The windows are tall and elegant, framed by layered drapery that echoes the curves of the paneling and reinforces the room's symmetry. The room's curves and lines lead your eyes back upward, right to the center. And there's the ceiling. Above it all is a painting of Athena, the goddess of wisdom and strategy, painted around 1721 by Giovanni Antonio Pellegrini. This ceiling originally came from the library of the Palazzo Pisani Moretta in Venice, before being installed here. Surrounding her are nymphs and cherubs, softening the scene, but the message is clear. This room isn't just feminine, it's intentional. She's the boss of this house. Even purple is considered a color of power. It was also Queen Victoria's favorite color. Alva's bed sits elevated on a raised platform, almost throne-like, which is sometimes how European palace beds are positioned. It's elegant, strategic, and it feels completely Alva. It subtly reinforces hierarchy within the room, positioning Alva quite literally above everything else. Even in private, there's a sense of command here. And if this room looks familiar to you, it should. It was the inspiration for Bertha Russell's bedroom in the Gilded Age. I knew this space looked familiar as soon as I saw it. The room embodies exactly what the character represents, and who is also loosely inspired by Alva Vanderbilt, representing everything from ambition, control, elegance, and power, all expressed through beautiful design. Standing here, it's impossible not to take mental design notes, the textures, the fabrics, the proportions, the patterns. If there's ever a future dream home bedroom, this is definitely it. This is Consuelo's bedroom, but it was designed by Alva for her daughter. And that distinction matters. Even Consuelo herself later said that when she sat in this room, she was sitting inside her mother's creation, not her own. She had very little freedom and very little liberty here. She couldn't even design her own bedroom. Nothing in this room reflects a young woman's personal taste or choice. Every detail in Consuelo's life was decided for her. Visually, the room is elegant, refined, and impeccably composed, but there's a restraint here that feels different from Alva's other spaces. It's less feminine, the ornamentation is more controlled, it's beautiful. This was a room meant for presentation, though. It was part of Alva's presentation. Everything in here was designed with one goal in mind, shaping Consuela into what Alva believed she needed to be. A future duchess, a symbol, a strategic piece in a much larger social game. When you look at portraits of Consuela, especially images of her wearing her crown, like right here, she doesn't look happy. Outwardly, she might appear regal, composed, and perfectly placed within the world she was pushed into, but standing in this room, you feel how early that role was constructed for her. It's really hard not to notice how different this space feels from Alva's own bedroom. Unlike the grand public staircase meant to be seen, this was a secondary private stairway, tucked away from the main entertaining spaces. It's made of warm wood rather than marble, more practical and durable, meant for use. It's really elegant, but not meant to be overly showy. This room was once two back-to-back dressing rooms, one connected to Alva's bedroom and the other connected to her daughter Consuelo's. Today, the Newport Preservation Society uses this room to display Harold Vanderbilt's yachting trophies. This is the Marble House's only guest bedroom, and that alone tells you a lot. Despite the scale of entertaining that occurred here, overnight guests weren't common. Most visitors already had their own Newport cottages to stay overnight in, or they rented summer homes nearby, or they even stayed at local hotels. Marble House was designed for dinners, balls, and spectacle, not extended stays. Still, this room is anything but modest. The walls are covered in rose-colored silk, softening the formality of the space. The bed is an extraordinary 18th century piece, complete with its original lace and hand-embroidered canopy still intact. One of the most notable guests who stayed here was Consuelo's future husband, the 9th Duke of Marlborough, staying under the same roof long before their famous unhappy marriage. The guest room has its own private sitting room back here, and as we walk through this hallway in the back, I can't help but think that this feels very much like those hidden passageways at Versailles that connect one room to the next. Almost like the house is unfolding as you walk through it. Even the floors here are amazing. They're parquet floors, another style that you see throughout the Palace of Versailles and many other palaces throughout the world. This room sits just behind the guest bedroom and would have functioned as a private retreat, a place to read, write letters, or sit quietly away from the spectacle downstairs. The palette here is soft, the walls are covered in French silk, and everything in here just feels cozy yet elegant. These adjoining rooms were originally the bedrooms of Alva and William's sons, Willie and Harold. Both brothers were excellent yachtsmen and loved the outdoors. That influence really shows itself here. Compared to the formal symmetry of Alva's spaces, this room feels lived in, personal, layered with curiosity and practicality rather than opulence. This light blue room, neoclassical in style, is so perfect for a young man's room. Willie and Harold were away at school most of the time, whereas Consuelo stayed right by Alva's side, as she wanted to be very close to her daughter's studies. In many ways, Alva lived through her daughter, and I'm sure her sons appreciated the freedom they had compared to their sister. When the Vanderbilts were away, this is where the Marble House's superintendent, William Gilmore, lived with his wife and daughter. Gilmore was hired here at just 16 years old, so he grew up with the Vanderbilts, and he went on to oversee the day-to-day operation here at the estate. The decor here is simpler and more functional, yet its placement within the house underscores something important. Marble House was never truly unoccupied. Even when the family wasn't here, the house required constant care, maintenance, and supervision, a reminder that these grand homes were sustained by unseen labor year-round. This is the scullery where dishes were cleaned and stored away. And here are some of those votes for women china. I just love these pieces. And finally, we arrive at the heart of it all, This massive kitchen is where menus for Newport's most lavish summer dinner parties took shape. Under the supervision of a French chef, being paid an astonishing salary of $10,000 a year at the time, a staff of 5 to 6 cooks prepared meals for the family and their guests on a 25-foot-long cast iron stove. That stove alone burned 30 tons of coal each summer season. And at least once a week, the kitchen produced meals for 50 to 60 guests. And then there were the truly special occasions when Alva's expectations were at her highest. The copper in this kitchen matters. Copper was the preferred material in professional kitchens because it heated evenly and quickly, essential for French-style cooking. The gleaming copper, the scale, the layout, it all feels distinctly French, reinforcing that even behind the scenes, elegance was non-negotiable. Because at Marble House, nothing was ever casual. Not the entertaining, not the unseen spaces, and certainly not Alva Belmont, known to the world as Alva Vanderbilt. Marble House is often remembered as one of the best examples of opulent excess that resulted from the Gilded Age. A Mini-Versailles, Alva Vanderbilt's love letter to the great European palaces, and her way of placing herself among them. Alva succeeded in placing the Vanderbilts at the very top of New York society, but more importantly, she redirected that visibility towards something larger than herself. She turned her private home into a public platform and used design, architecture, and media as tools for change. Marble House was built to be seen and eventually to be heard. It became a place where women found their voice and began the long fight for voting rights. And next week, we're stepping inside a very different Vanderbilt Newport cottage, one that was built in direct competition to this one. I hope you enjoyed this tour of Marble House. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up. It truly does help support preservation efforts and helps keep these stories behind these homes alive. Until the next one, my friends, keep celebrating the beauty of vintage home. Au revoir.